You think you know the story, the shepherd boy, the giant, the king, but that was just the beginning. The crown is a cage, the throne a trap of shadows, and the greatest battle David will ever face is not against the Philistine, but against the monster the crown is creating inside him. The gilded halls of the palace feel more like a prison now. Every whisper from the courtiers is a potential dagger, every glance from a servant, a judgment. King David sits not on his throne, but in the shadows of his chambers, the weight of the crown pressing down on him like a physical force. He stares at his own hands, once calloused from the harp and the sling, now soft, but stained with the guilt he can never wash away. The ghost of Uriah the Hittite is a constant companion, a cold presence in every room. Bathsheba's silence is a louder accusation than any prophet could scream. We see the internal fracture. The man after God's own heart is a man at war with his own soul. His prayers feel like they hit a ceiling of bronze, unanswered, leaving him in a spiritual desert. The joy of the Lord has vanished, replaced by a cold, grouping dread. This is the cost of power, the poison of unconfessed sin. And in the quiet, a new thought begins to take root, a desperate, dark solution to his torment. If he cannot bear the weight of his sin, perhaps he can shift it. He can find a scapegoat, someone to bear the brunt of the court's suspicion and God's displeasure. The king is not just broken, he is becoming dangerous. Meanwhile, the kingdom itself feels the tremors of its king's failing heart. The administrative scrolls pile up, ignored. Petitions from the people go unanswered. The military, once a well-oiled machine under Joab's command, feels the subtle shift in loyalty. Joab, the fierce and pragmatic commander, watches David with a soldier's calculating eyes. He knows something is deeply wrong. He carried out the king's dark order concerning Uriah, and the blood is on both their hands. But Joab is a survivor, and his loyalty to the house of David is now tempered by a sharp instinct for self-preservation. He sees the vulnerability, the crack in the dynasty's foundation, and he knows that vultures, both inside and outside of Israel, are beginning to circle. The peace David fought so hard to build is fragile, a thin veneer over seething rivalries and ancient hatreds, all waiting for a sign of weakness. And within the royal household, the children of David are not blind. They are growing up in this atmosphere of tension and hidden sin. Amnon, the firstborn, observes his father's distance with a sense of entitlement and neglect. Absalom, the handsome and charismatic son, watches everything. He sees his father's anguish, his mother's quiet pain, and the court's simmering discontent. He learns the lessons of power not from David's victories, but from his failures. He sees how a king's mistake can cripple a nation, and the dark, ambitious seed is planted in his own heart. The house that David built is not just a physical structure of stone and cedar. It is a family. And like all families, it is vulnerable to the sins of the father. The cracks are not just in the foundation of the kingdom, but in the very heart of the lineage God promised would last forever. Beyond the palace walls, in the dark tents of the Ammonites and the proud cities of the Philistines, word has spread. The Lion of Judah is wounded. His roar has become a whimper. Old enemies who once trembled at the name of David now sharpen their swords and whisper of rebellion. They see a king consumed by his own demons, a commander who no longer leads his troops into battle, a nation whose God seems to have turned his face away. Alliances are being forged in secret. war plans drawn on maps, and the promise of plunder and reclaimed glory fuels their fire. The storm that was held back by David's strength is now gathering on the horizon, and it promises to be a tempest that could wipe the house of David from the earth. But the external enemies are not the only threat. A more insidious danger is festering within the walls of Jerusalem itself. The court is a snake pit of ambition. Nobles who once bowed low now question David's judgment. They remember the vibrant young hero and see a haunted, ineffective king. Whispers turn into murmurs, and murmurs into plots. Some look to the handsome, charming Absalom as a more suitable heir, a fresh start. Others, from Saul's former lineage, see an opportunity to reassert their claim to the throne. The unity of Israel, painstakingly built by David, is unraveling thread by thread. Trust is a currency that has been devalued, and betrayal is in the air, as tangible as the desert dust. And in the midst of this political and military turmoil, the spiritual battle rages fiercest of all. Nathan the prophet, the man who dared to confront the king, walks through the city with a heavy heart. He delivered God's judgment. He pronounced the forgiveness, but he also foretold the consequences. The sword will not depart from David's house. He sees those consequences unfolding now like a tragic play written by divine justice. He knows he must speak again, but the words are dangerous. To challenge a king who is already paranoid is to risk everything. Yet the word of the Lord burns within him like a fire. He must be the conscience of the king, even if the king no longer wishes to listen. He must stand in the gap, a lone voice warning of an avalanche that is about to be unleashed, an avalanche triggered by David's own sin. The question is no longer if the storm will break, but when, and who will be left standing in the wreckage. The consequences Nathan prophesied begin to take a horrifically personal shape within the royal family. The sin of the father manifests in the corruption of the sons. Amnon, David's firstborn, is a product of this new, toxic environment. He has watched his father take what he wanted, a beautiful woman, regardless of the cost. He has learned that desire for a prince is a justification in itself. A twisted obsession takes root in his heart, directed towards his own half-sister, Tamar. This is not a simple youthful indiscretion. It is a monstrous violation born from a sense of royal entitlement and a complete lack of moral guardrails. David, absorbed in his own guilt and depression, is a distant, absent father. He sees the trouble brewing in Amnon, but he does nothing. His own failure has paralyzed him, rendering him unable to discipline, to guide, to protect his own children. He is the king who unified a nation, but cannot rule his own house. The unthinkable happens. Amnon, with cunning and force, assaults his sister Tamar. The aftermath is a silent, devastating explosion that rips the family apart. Tamar's cries are swallowed by the opulent halls. She is left desolate, a ruined woman in a society that will blame her. Her brother Absalom finds her, and in his eyes a cold, murderous rage is born. He tells her to be quiet for now, to not take this to their father. He knows, as everyone knows, that David will do nothing. The king's inaction is a second betrayal, more confirming than the first. Absalom's smile becomes a mask, his charm a weapon. He bides his time, he plays the loyal son, but inside he is forging a plan for a vengeance that will be as brutal as the crime itself. The house is divided against itself. David is confronted with the horror. The news of Tamar's violation and Absalom's simmering hatred finally pierces the fog of his own misery. But instead of righteous fury, of swift kingly justice, he responds with a weak, anguished passivity. He is furious, the scripture says, but he does nothing. He is trapped between his love for his sons and the crushing weight of Nathan's prophecy. The sword is in his own house, and he can feel its point at his own throat. His inaction is a green light for chaos. It tells Amnon there are no consequences. It tells Absalom that justice is not coming from the throne, so he must take it himself. And it tells the entire court that the king has lost his authority, not just for the kingdom, but over his own blood. The poisoned seed of David's sin has now sprouted into a vine that is strangling his entire legacy. 2 years of tense, suffocating silence pass within the palace. The wound of Tamar's violation is left to fester, an open secret that everyone knows and no one speaks of. Absalom plays the long game, his hatred a cold, patient flame. He invites all the king's sons to a sheep-shearing festival at his estate. It is a scene of feigned normality, of brotherhood and celebration. But beneath the surface, it is a hunter laying a trap. David is hesitant, but Absalom's cunning persuasion, a skill he has honed to perfection, wins out. He even requests Amnon's specific attendance, a detail that should have sent alarm bells ringing through the palace, but David, perhaps hoping for reconciliation, agrees. The stage is set for a bloodbath. The festival unfolds. There's food, wine, and laughter that rings hollow. Then, at Absalom's quiet, prearranged signal, his servants strike. Amnon is murdered, cut down by his brother's command. The other princes flee in terror, believing Absalom is on a rampage to kill them all and secure the throne. A rumor, twisted and exaggerated, races back to Jerusalem ahead of them. Absalom has slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left. The news hits David like a physical blow. He tears his clothes and collapses in grief, the prophecy fulfilling itself in the most devastating way imaginable. The sword has claimed its first royal victim, and it is by the hand of his own son. In the chaotic aftermath, as the truth is clarified, only Amnon is dead, a new reality dawns. Absalom does not return to Jerusalem to face justice. He flees. He runs to his maternal grandfather, the king of Geshur, finding refuge in a foreign court. For 3 years he is in exile, a fugitive prince, and for 3 years David mourns. He mourns for Amnon, dead and gone. But in a shocking turn, his heart also yearns for Absalom, the son who is now a murderer, but who is also alive and lost to him. The kingdom is held in a state of suspended animation. The king is paralyzed by a grief that is both for the victim and the perpetrator. Joab watches, his strategic mind calculating the immense danger of an exiled, charismatic prince with a claim to the throne. The internal threat is no longer a quiet plot. It is a living, breathing rival kingdom waiting just across the border, and its name is Absalom. Joab, the pragmatist, sees the unresolved situation with Absalom as a festering wound threatening the life of the nation. He engineers Absalom's return to Jerusalem, but it is a hollow victory. David, his heart a tangled mess of love, anger, and grief, issues a cruel decree. Absalom may return to the city, but he is forbidden to see the king's face. For 2 years, Absalom lives in Jerusalem, a prince in a gilded cage, a serpent brought back into the heart of the palace. This isolation is a fatal mistake. It does not quell Absalom's ambition. It fuels it. It gives him time and a powerful grievance. He spends these years not in repentance, but in building a case against his father. He positions himself at the city gate, intercepting people coming to the king for judgment. "See, your claims are good and right," he tells them, "but there is no man appointed by the king to hear you." He presents himself as the accessible, sympathetic alternative to his distant, disengaged father. He steals the hearts of the people of Israel. One handshake, one sympathetic nod, one promise of better leadership at a time. His charm is his army, his words are his weapons. He builds a coalition of the discontented, the overlooked, the ambitious. After 4 years of this careful, insidious campaigning, Absalom makes his move. Under the pretext of fulfilling a vow in Hebron, he requests the king's permission to leave Jerusalem. David, still blind to the scale of the conspiracy, gives his blessing. It is the last order he will ever give to his son as king. In Hebron, Absalom declares himself king. The trumpet blast of rebellion echoes across the hills of Judah. The message is clear. The throne is vacant and a new king has arisen. The shockwave reaches Jerusalem. The city, once a symbol of David's power, is now a trap. The trusted advisor, Ahithophel, David's own counselor, has defected to Absalom, a betrayal that hits with the force of a physical blow. David is left with a handful of loyal men. He has a heart-wrenching choice: make a stand and bathe the city in the blood of his own people, or flee. As he looks upon the palace he built, the city he loves, the sword Nathan prophesied is now swinging directly at his head. He must run for his life, from the son he loves into the wilderness, a king without a crown, a father betrayed by his own blood. The house of David is not just cracking, it is shattering.